have a number of areas that are affected. West Nile will come up, yes. Rwenzori will come up, Bugisi will come up, Busoga will come up. All those areas will come up. Kapchora will come up. So what we need to do, let's move phase by phase. Now we are going into, and as I've said, we are going into a budgeting time. So even if you now started talking about Sebei, is there a budget for it? So what we need to do, have a session of all areas that are affected.
A section of members of parliament is imploring the executive to widen the scope of war debt claims currently under consideration to include other parts of the country which were under the clutches of insurgency that date back to the Idi Amin era.
When we are talking about compensation of victims of the Lord's Resistance Army, we requested, and I stood up myself that time, and I requested the Attorney General to include Busoga region, where Lakwena, the Holy Spirit movement, took people's cows, destroyed property, and it is not mentioned anywhere.
The procedure matter was raising is that as we receive the region, for those that went to court, wouldn't it be procedurally right for us to receive a highlight of all the regions that government has as those that were affected by war? And then as we go to plan, we are aware that this region government has at least recognized, because even one time when the president was in Bugiri, I raised that matter and the president promised the people of Bugiri to address.
During plenary on Thursday, the MPs revived the matter previously brought up on August 19, 2021, about the scope of reparations to be further widened to the Rwenzori sub-region, which for long spells suffered at the hands of the Allied Democratic Forces operating in the volatile neighboring DRC and West Nile, where a number of rebellions sprouted. The move could spark an avalanche of lawsuits by claimants in these areas, as is the case in Acholi, Lango and Teso sub-regions, further subjecting the treasury to more contingent liabilities. The government is currently expediting compensations for war debt claims for the Acholi, Lango and Teso sub-regions, which were put under strain as the army attempted to flush out rebel fighters for nearly 2 decades. President Museveni first hinted on government paying reparations to the communities affected during the elections campaigns in 2005 and dangled the same promise as a campaign pledge for re-election in 2011, 2016 and 2021. But after being put to task by leaders in Teso sub-region during the last campaign, the government early this year committed 150 billion shillings as reparations for communities in 29 districts in 3 sub-regions.
And the president's order was that let's not compensate only those who went to court, because they are not the only ones who lost. Let us compensate all the people in the sub-regions who claim to have lost. So a verification exercise was put in place for claimants to come out.
As a result, officials from the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs have in the last weeks been moving back and forth to the 3 sub-regions to conduct a final verification exercise. Who is eligible, who gets how much, and who is on whose list is a matter of contestation between lawyers representing groups of claimants, especially in Teso and Lango sub-regions. Only in Acholi is the process relatively calm. Also, while 150 billion shillings was allocated, the lawyers' fees in the cases so far amounts to an astronomical 100 billion shillings. There are fears, as is the norm, that lawyers could curtail the process by filing for temporary injunctions against the exercise until they are paid. But Deputy Attorney General Jackson Kafunzi allayed these fears.
That we are engaging with the lawyers to see how best this exercise can go forward without any form of hindrance. so that their clients receive that which they are entitled to. Then the rest we shall sit and talk as lawyers.
In Teso, the well-heeled law firm Kampala Associated Advocates is pitted against Omongo Land Company Advocates, which is representing another batch of claimants. Omongole first represented a group led by Kasilo County MP Elijah Cooper and 220 others who in 2002 sued the Attorney General and the District Councils of Moroto, Kotido and Nakapipirit for the loss of lives and livestock to rustlers while the UPDF looked on. The case delayed to take off at the Soroti High Court until 2010 when it was merged with two other cases of former Kapelebion County MP Julius Ochen and 205,000 others and Imodot Edim and 105 others. In January 2018, the then Soroti resident judge, David Batema, awarded 116 billion shillings to the plaintiffs as compensation for loss of livelihood, while Omongole's legal fees were taxed at 10.2 billion shillings. 8 years earlier on in 2010, another group led by Jerison Ewut and 7,000 had sued government seeking 35 billion shillings. The group sued through Kampala Associated Advocates or KAA. Subsequently, in January 2011, President Museveni wrote to the then Justice Minister, Kidu Makubia, directing him to constitute a team to verify the genuine claimants and pay them in not more than 2 financial years. Mr. Museveni wrote, and I quote, "No other claims of similar nature should be entertained in future from this region. An out-of-court settlement should be reached immediately." As such, KAA says it's their claim currently being fast-tracked.
That the two cases, his claimant's cases and our claimant's matters, are mutually exclusive. Okay? To the extent that the display of the verification report by the Attorney General was not in relation to Mr. Omongole's clients. Okay? It was in relation to the TAPCO clients. The verification exercise that Mr. Omongole's clients need to go through with the government is an entirely new exercise that does not in any way prejudice the continuation of the validation exercise in relation to our clients. In any event, we have thousands of clients who are also yet to be verified.
Idu told NTV that following their case, they entered into a consent judgment with the Attorney General's office to embark on a verification exercise which was supposed to culminate into payment.
Rome was not built in one day. And the process of compensating the claimants for the loss of their cattle or animals in Teso is definitely going to be a process that will require that every claimant, regardless of which group or case they fall under, will have to be verified. Those names or the people who have been verified will have to be validated. And after the validation, that's when the payments will be prepared and disbursed directly to the claimant's individual accounts.
In various correspondences, it isn't catered that the Attorney General's office is verifying claims of 33,664 claimants, ostensibly KAA's claimants, from the verification exercise of 2014. But in a September 15th letter to the Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Bulanya, the law firm indicated that it represents 92,000 claimants across Teso.
I think it's wrong for you to say that how did we grow the number. I think that is misunderstanding the spirit and the purpose of the President's directive. When the President issued this directive, the intention, the spirit of that exercise was to find an avenue where everyone who legitimately claims, okay, to have been affected by the different events that resulted in the loss of property, loss of livestock, to be compensated.
However, Omongola is accusing KAA of inflating its list of claimants.
When we wrote to the Attorney General and said this is fraudulent and copy to the President, copy to the president, vice president, speaker, deputy speaker, the chairpersons and all that. And it was clear that there was a list of now 33,000 people. So we ask ourselves, where does this list come from? It then emerges that, yes, there's a group known as TAPCO, and there was a case in the O2 versus Attorney General, which I remember in 2010, they entered a consent with the government, and there were 7,000 people. Those are the people who entered consent between Attorney General and the TAPCO. There were 7,000 people. So how they have gotten to 33,000 is unknown. For us, we submitted ours, the people who have been in court throughout, and they are known. And yet there is nobody in that list. So now if TAPCO's list is 7,000, where do the other 26,000 come from?
Omongole says he represents 300,000 claimants through the 4 court cases for which they demand 126 billion shillings. He said he tried to cross-match his list with the Attorney General's but was shocked by what he unraveled.
So we check who are these people. When we check to find out who are these people, and a majority of the people are youth, either under the youth structures and women. And the whole thing was scandalized. See, where did youth, women, for instance, in my own village, it is all young people. The elders who were registered here are not on the list. So I started getting calls everywhere and say, you people have brought a list, but who are these people?
In another September 22, 2021 letter to the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Anita Among, Omongole said the current working list is fraudulent.
When we tried to look at this, we actually saw that hardly 1%, not even any number of people claiming who are old men are in the other list. Because largely, the other list is youth and women who did not own cows, who did not own any animals, cattle, who were not even there during that time. So the chances of them being here and there are really very minimal, because the other list is largely comprised of a certain generation of people, which is different from a generation that is claiming.
So if someone says KA has hijacked, we didn't take these instructions over from anyone else. You get it? It's not like it's Mr. Mongole who was handling, then we came and hijacked his case. You get what I mean? There you'd say, you mean KA has come at, Mongole did this digging, then KA has come to take over. Maybe that someone would be justified. But we're here from the very beginning. We started this, okay? So if you're talking of duplicity, who is duplicating who? We are the ones who went to court. We are the ones who obtained that president's directive. We are the ones who obtained that consent judgment, and then basing on that, okay, I would ask you to also go and look at Mr. Mongole's documents in court. He was basically and essentially using the documents that had been generated from our case as a basis to expedite the grant of judgment in his.
What we have done recently, that we have engaged with the lawyers. We share the list we have as a ministry with them. They give us the list they have, so that we compare, so that we do not have double entry. If a person appears on the list that the ministry has and also appears on the list that the lawyer has, then that person is struck off and left on one list. Then we are able to isolate the people that do not appear on either list, so that we compile those lists and attach them and see how best to bring them on board. Now, the exercise that we are doing right now is not exhaustive. The President, through Cabinet, has established what he has called a Cabinet Subcommittee. Now, the work of this subcommittee with our ministry, what we are doing right now is that we have prepared a Cabinet memo proposing, among others, how we should adopt the lists that do not, that belong to the lawyers and do not currently appear on the display.
Kafunzi says verification is a continuous process.
In each sub-region, in the 3 sub-regions, we have co-opted a team of 20 people. The team of 20 people, these are not among those who went to court. They are not members of the Attorney General's chambers, but they are ordinary people, elders, opinion leaders, religious leaders. We co-opt them when we are finalizing terms of reference so that they can help us sieve through this exercise and guide us. They will be able to go down and tell us which claim is fictitious.
In Lango, the Lira High Court in July 2014 awarded 1.1 trillion shillings as the value of compensation for livestock in the case of Dylan Johnson and 69,744 others versus Attorney General filed in 2010. Justice Simon Byabakama, who is now the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, ruled that each plaintiff or complainant is each entitled to 900,000 shillings for each head of cattle, 150,000 shillings for a goat, 160,000 shillings for a sheep, and 250,000 shillings for a pig. Each claimant was awarded 4 million shillings as general damages, awarded to compensate for direct effects of the accident, while the claimant's injuries can be clearly linked to the defendant's actions, and another 1 million shillings to each individual as exemplary damages, an award given to victims when the conduct of the individual who caused the victim harm is deliberately violent, fraudulent, or grossly reckless. The awards carried an interest of 25% per annum from the date of judgment. The lawyers' fees were taxed at 53 billion shillings. Adam McMott, who represented the claimants in this case, told NTV he's open to talks.
In our claim alone, if you are to value it as per the time of judgment, you'll go to a figure of 1.7 trillion. So if the registrar of the High Court comes with a figure of 50 billion lawyers' fees, that will be less than 3% of the total amount of money that is paid. And it's verifiable because it's subject to what the court has scrutinized from the court record, came up with a figure. The challenge could be that as a government or as a people of Uganda, we lack the resources to pay that. But these are what the government put in its own laws, and we have followed the law to get to those figures. It's not a question of our minds. Therefore, if you calculate that, but of course, as a Ugandan, I will be willing to discuss with the Attorney General and see what's best for the region, what's best for all the people of Uganda.
Out of the 69,745 claimants in his case, government has a record of 42,000, out of which 18,000 have been validated for payment amounting to 289 billion shillings, but verification continues.
It was supposed to be a joint verification, but I should tell you that we will go with the government figures because they had the resources to do a verification. We don't want to question that now because we believe they're working in good faith. And that is for the 18,000 people. For the remainder of the 42,000 that the government did the first verification on, we don't have a figure yet because it's subject to a lot of things. And then also for the other, to make the whole group complete, 69,745, we'll have to wait for the final verification report.
Verification queries have also extended to claimants in the Lango sub-region.
I have verified claimants that exist. I have not seen a verified list of claimants from any other lawyer.
The other group of claimants in this case of John Francis Ongia and others versus the Attorney General is represented by Bashasha and Company advocates. Bashasha previously represented another civil suit number 16 of 2009 of Moses Ochi, Amy Odong, and 4,304 others versus the Attorney General, in which Justice Byabakama, then as the Lira High Court resident judge, awarded 36.1 billion shillings as compensation for 60,314 head of cattle, where each head of cattle was valued at 600,000 shillings. The claimants or plaintiffs were also awarded 8.8 billion shillings for goats and sheep. It is unclear whether the monies were paid but the case is referenced in another suit in 2016 at High Court Civil Division after Police's Criminal Investigations Department attempted to investigate payments arising out the remedy orders of mandamus to the law firm. In a February 20, 2017 judgment, the court barred police, their agents and any other person from pursuing the matter. On September 9, 2021, Attorney General Chidowa Chwanuka raised red flags about the excessive award of costs, speculative quantum compensation, and difficulty in accessing court files of these cases. He hinted on setting aside all judgments in the claim cases and approach payment in a streamlined and transparent manner. But the law firms say they are pursuing justice for their clients.
I have heard some people say their claim is around 1.6 trillion, which would be a third of the economy or of the budget. Now, currently what we have available to us is 150 billion as pledged by the government. For the 3 sub-regions, we intend to work within that. But if it is not exhaustive of the demands on the ground, we shall still go back to Cabinet and see if we can get a supplementary so that we pay those that will have been left out.
Kafunzi says sanity must prevail during the exercise. The data collection exercise for all claimants is expected to be completed by October 30th, 2021, and verification commences. Then, a cabinet subcommittee led by the State Minister for Northern Uganda, Grace Kwichinyi, will present a memo to cabinet to give the payment a green light.